G'day guys, Dean from Blog for the Blood God here, and picking secondaries in the new Chaos Space Marine Codex can be one of the most challenging parts about list creation. So I thought I'd do a real quick video where I'd talk about one of the many combinations of secondary objectives that you can take to increase your scores in games.
Blog for the Blood God.
Alrighty guys, so let's talk about Chaos Space Marine secondaries, in particular Long War and Banners, and how they pair together to work quite well for Chaos Space Marine armies. Now it's worth noting that, as I've discussed in previous videos, and as many of you might be aware, the secondary options for Chaos Space Marines are quite limiting and also quite difficult to achieve. So a lot of the unique secondaries for the various legions are quite poor, and even the generic ones available to the CSM are quite difficult to score high on, and they're also quite easy for your opponent to challenge and deny. So I want to talk about a little combo of secondaries that you can take, which creates an interesting dynamic on the table, and that is the Long War and Banners. So first, let's just do a brief recap of how they both work. The Long War is basically, at the end of each battle round, you score 1 victory point for every enemy unit that you killed that was holding or within range of an objective marker. So interestingly, they don't have to be holding it, they don't have to be like in control of it, they just have to be within range of it. So if they're on that objective, but you're also on that objective at the start of the turn, and therefore they're not holding it, it's contested, but they're within range of it, if you then kill them in your turn, that'll get you a point. And also, this is not directly capped. So if you kill 1, you get 1 point. If you kill 2, you'll get 2 points. If you kill 3, you'll get 3 points. So that's just for killing enemy units that were within range of an objective marker. The next part is if you then hold an objective marker that was held by your opponent at the start of the battle round, or at the start of the turn, you get an additional 2 victory points. So basically what this is going to mean is that if they're holding an objective and then at the end of your turn you're holding it, so you stole it from them, you'll get an additional 2 points. And it's also worth noting that this doesn't have to be one of the objectives that you killed an enemy unit that was within range of. So let's say they've got, a unit of rangers on one objective and a war walker on another. If you kill that unit of rangers and then just walk a couple of guys onto that objective that has the war walker on it, so you now control that one, you'll get 1 victory point for killing the rangers and a further 2 for controlling or stealing the objective from out underneath of that war walker. So even though you're still within range, you're still going to get the additional 2 points for 3 points for that battle round. Now this is capped at a total between those two conditions, a total of 3 victory points per battle round. So in order to score a 15, you're going to have to do this every single turn. However, if you do it for 4 turns, you're going to get a 12. That's actually pretty good. 12 is a reasonable expectation. If you can build a secondary into your list that you're like, I think I'm going to get around 12 points for this, that's pretty good. So that's how the Long War works. And then Banners, basically at the end of your movement phase, you can, if you're within range of an objective marker, you can raise a banner. And then at the end of your command phase, you get 1 victory point for every banner that's up. And at the end of the game, at the end of the final battle round, you get another one for every banner that's up. However, your opponent can take your banners down by being in control of that objective at the start of any command phase. So basically that means that if you move up, raise a banner, if they then take that objective off you, in the start of your command phase, the banner will come down and you score the victory points at the end of your command phase. So essentially, if your opponent steals those objectives from you, they're going to be taking down your banners. Now, the thing that I want to discuss today is how these two secondaries actually have some quite interesting interplay and ways that you can maximize them if you select both when you're writing a Chaos Space Marine list. Now, there's a few things to note here. Some of them are the necessary units that you're going to require. So Chaos Space Marines have quite a few very good, fast units. So things like Possessed, for example, are quite fast. Raptors, Warp Talons, quite fast. And it's interesting to note that almost all, if not every single mission pack, every single terrain layout or objective layout is going to have at least one objective marker in your deployment zone, which you can raise a banner on early, easily, because you don't even have to move to do it. And it's going to have at least 2 that are within the aura from that objective is within 9 inches of your deployment zone. And this is because a lot of them have either an objective in the center, which is your deployment is 9 inches from the center. So you could move out 1 inch and you'd be within, you know, you got to move out 3 inches, sorry, and you'd be within control range of that objective because it's 9 inches from your center. Or however the math works. But basically, yeah, that one that's in the center, you can walk on it with models that move 6 inches. Yeah, you're fine. But that's because there's the 40 mil base, which pushes it out, you know, roughly an inch from the center in all directions, slightly less, but roughly an inch. And then you've got the 3 inches, so you got about 4 inches out from the center, so you're 5 inches from the deployment, so you can walk on with cultists. And then a lot of them have an objective that's 12 inches from your deployment, because a lot of them have like a 24-inch no man's land, and the objectives are somewhere in the center of no man's land. So those ones are all going to be 12 inches from your deployment. And again, when you factor in the 3-inch aura and the 40 mil base, that means that they will be within 9 inches of your deployment zone. And the reason that I point this out, and the reason that it's important, is because possessed move 9 inches. And raptors and warp talons obviously move 12. So these are all really good units that can go out and raise banners on turn 1 in those midfield objectives, right? And then you have like a unit of cultists or legionnaires raise the banner in your backfield turn 1. So it's very easy for the Chaos Space Marine player, if they go first, to raise 3 banners on the first turn. Now, if you do this and your opponent fails to take any of those banners off of you, you'll get 15 points, because you'll get 3 a turn, and then an additional 3 at the end of the last battle round, which is 15, right? So if you've selected banners, you've gone first, you've thrown your possessed out onto this objective, raised a banner, you've thrown your raptors or your warp talons onto that objective, you've raised a banner, and then you've raised a banner in your home field, right? You now have 3 banners up, and now if your opponent doesn't do something about them, you're going to get 15 points, all right? So then what's going to happen is that's going to force your opponent to move towards those objectives and hop on them, and then they need to control those objectives in order to take your banners down. But if they do this, first of all, they're bringing themselves closer to you, which is generally what you want as a Chaos Space Marine player, because Chaos Space Marine players are very combat heavy, and if your opponent's coming into those objectives, that means that you can punch them off, right? So that's really good. But in addition, what that's doing is that's meaning that your opponent is incentivized to end their move on top of the objective markers, which then means in your turn, you can score long war quite reliably, because you can go, cool, they're going to try and take down my banners, therefore I'm going to score slightly lower in banners, but I'm going to score massively higher in long war. So it has a really interesting interplay where every time they try to take down one of your banners, they're trying to deny you 1 banner's point, but they are instead actually giving you 3 long war points. So that's the way that this combo works. And the reason it's important to note is because the problem that a lot of people will experience with Long War, particularly on the top tables where people are more familiar with the Long War and how to get around it, is that if your opponent knows what Long War does, they will simply hold their backfield objectives, which generally they're going to have 2 of. They're going to have 1 like in their deployment zone, and then 1 which is like diagonally across from your deployment zone in an area where it's difficult for you to get to, right? So they'll go, cool, I'm just going to hold those 2, and I'm going to score 8 victory points every turn, like 8 primary points every turn, and I'm going to stay away from you, and they're going to blast you from range where you can't really do anything about it. And then in the turns 4 and 5, that's when they're going to push out and get their 12s, right? And the idea there is you're going to get 12s early in the game, they're going to get 12s late in the game, so you're going to neutralize yourself on primary, but you're going to struggle to score your secondaries because if you took Long War, they're just not going to let you. They're just not going to be on the objectives. So you're going to struggle to get your Long War. And you're going to struggle to kill their units, which means they're going to win the fight. And if they win the fight, then it's really hard for you to score other, so say you're versing Knights, for example. The Knights just all stay back, and now it's really hard for you to get those bring it down points because you've got to slug all the way across the table to get them. And this is why taking banners is really important, because if you take banners, well, now that those Knights can't just stay back, because if they stay back, you're going to get a 12-point primary the first couple of turns, they're going to get it the last couple of turns, but you're going to get a 15 for banners, and they're going to get, if they didn't take banners, obviously, because they're Knights, but if they, took some kind of equivalent, they're only going to get 8 points, so it's just a really tricky way of taking a secondary to incentivize your opponent to make hard decisions, because every time you push your opponent into a position where they have to make a difficult decision, there's a probability that they're going to make the wrong decision. So trying to manipulate your opponent into making decisions all game is how you end up winning games, because eventually they start fucking up and making the bad decisions. And in this example, what you're asking them is, what would they rather? You get a 15 for banners, or would they rather try to push you off your banners, try to neutralize your primary, but open you up to getting easy access to the Long War? And that's a difficult question for them to answer, because it all comes down to how durable they think their units are, how fast they are, what their secondaries are, what their ability to survive is, how, there's so many factors that they would need to calculate that the probability of them making the optimal decision here is relatively low. Now you might be thinking, well, hang on, if you take Long War and banners and they decide, okay, cool, we're going to let you have your 15 in banners, then you're likely to score quite low in Long War. So are you not better to take banners and something else? And sometimes that is the case, right? Sometimes you are better taking grind them down. Sometimes you are better taking no prisoners. Really does depend on your opponent and what's in their list. But the beautiful thing about this combo is that even if they do that, right? Turn 1, you move out onto those 3 objectives, you raise your banners, right? Then turn 2, well, you're already halfway up the table now, and your opponent stayed back. So turn 2, you move forward again. You try to utilize really fast units, and you try to utilize things like warp time to just, even though you can't charge after warp time, it's still a fantastic way to just propel yourself up the board. And then turns 3, 4, and 5, you're very likely to be able to kill some things off of objectives. So you're still probably going to get roughly 9 points for Long War and 15 points for banners if they decide to let you have your banners. If they think, no, I don't want to give him easy Long War points, I'm going to let him keep his banners up, and I'm not going to go onto those objectives, you're probably going to get a 15 for banners and a 9 for Long War. However, if they do engage with you, they're probably going to take down a few of your banners, which then you're going to have to spend time and effort trying to put back up your banners. So you're probably going to get a 9 for banners, but then you'll probably get a 15 for Long War, a 12 to 15 for Long War. So it really does sort of go both ways, where regardless of which combination you take, you're likely to get a 9 and a 15 for a total of 24 points, which is the equivalent of getting 2 12s. And 2 12s is really good. And then if you can lock in your third secondary, which this is going to depend on the rest of your list and what the rest of your list is doing. It might be something like Assassinate, it might be Bring It Down. They're both pretty good if your opponent has the right units in it. Or it might be, you might be Creations of Bile, in which case you take the specimens for the spider, or you might take Warp Ritual and go in for that and just, score those points. Or, if you don't have any Psychers and they do, you might take a Paw the Witch. So there's lots of different options for that third secondary. But yeah, the idea of comboing banners and the Long War is what's, is, I think, has potential to be a staple for CSM lists. Like, that could be something that you start with. And my advice, and I've said this a few times, but it bears repeating, is when you're writing a list, the first thing you should always do is, before you even look at who you want your HQ to be, whoever, you don't even know who your warlord's going to be, the first thing you need to do is look at the secondaries that are available to you. So most people will play a certain faction. They pick a faction that they like. You might pick a faction because you think it's got powerful units or powerful combos or synergies or whatever, right? But you pick a faction that you like, and then look at all of the secondaries available to that faction, both the unique secondaries and the standard generic secondaries. And then once you've looked at all of the secondaries available, you've got to pick which ones, A, match your play style, and B, and more importantly B, are achievable in game, right? The ones that you think you can score high on. And once you've picked those secondaries, you then will design a list that's designed to optimize those secondaries. So in this example, if you go, okay, cool, I'm going to start my list with Long War and Banners, right? And then I'm going to pick, my third one will be picked based on opponent. So I'm going to make sure that I pick units when selecting my army that help me score the Banners and the Long War. So that means you want fast, hard-hitting units, right? Because the other thing about Long War is if you say you move your Raptors up onto one objective, but then you move, say, a squad of Khorne Berserkers up behind them, right? Behind a ruin or something like that, your opponent moves in to kill the Raptors, but now your Khorne Berserkers are right there, ready to launch a counter charge, kill the unit that just killed your Raptors, but also, which is going to score you with Long War, but also now they're in the center of the table because you're getting extra movement from that charge range, you're getting, it allows you to sort of string units together. So you design your list so that you have sufficient units to create those combos, those charges and those counter charges. And then basically you're going to play a trading card game over that central objective where they're going to put something on it, you're going to put something on it, back and forth, back and forth. So you need enough units that you can do that across multiple fronts, because they're probably going to try and take down both. If you've moved out onto two, the central objective, your backfield, and one off to the left somewhere, they're probably going to try and take down multiple banners if they can. So you want to be able to go, okay, well, I need to make sure that I have multiple units so that I can push on, kill them off that thing, raise a new banner, and then dare them to do it again, and then as long as you have enough units that are durable, hard-hitting, and fast, that you can just keep sandbagging that objective and keep sending out more units to support it and replenish that, send more into the meat grinder. As long as you can do that, then they're probably going to kill more units than you, but that's fine because we didn't pick grind it down. We picked the Long War. So yeah, that's more or less sort of one of the directions that I see Chaos Space Marine lists headed. And this is not necessarily due to the units available to the Codex, but the secondary objectives available. Because, like, you could build your list around grind them down and go, cool, I'm going to take a big, chunky, unkillable Terminator unit, and then I'm going to take, like, the unkillable Disco Lord and a bunch of characters that can't be targeted. They're going to go inside the Terminator unit. I'm going to build around that. And score 15 for grind them down, because nobody's killing all that shit, and you're going to be killing multiple units every turn. So you could build around that. However, I don't think that secondary I don't think it pairs well with any other secondaries in particular, which means, cool, you've locked in one secondary, but what are your other two? You now have to struggle to figure out what your other two are. If you're taking banners, well, banners is only good if you have lots of units to go out and raise those banners. And they're also units that you're likely to be sacrificing, because you throw a unit out onto the objective, you raise a banner, but now that unit's sitting duck and is generally able to be punked by enemy units. So that hurts your grind them down. So you grind them down is very good. On its own, it is a very good secondary, but it doesn't really pair well with any other secondaries, which can make it difficult for you to score high across the board. Whereas I think banners and the Long War they actually pair quite well, and they allow you to score multiple objectives with high value. And then there's things like what's it called? No prisoners, where you can score quite high on that, but you can't really build a list around that because you don't know what your opponents are going to be. And there's a lot of opponents out there that don't give up very many points for no prisoners. So as a result, if you try to build your list around achieving no prisoners, you're sort of going to struggle in certain matchups. So you don't want to build around no prisoners, and I don't think you want to build around grind, in which case the Long War is the natural selection in that, whatever it's called, no mercy, no respite, secondary, category. However, you don't necessarily have to take that. You could go a completely different route. You could go, I'm going to take grind them down and warp ritual. They pair okay, because you can go, cool, I'm just going to put a character in the middle of that Terminator unit, and they're going to move up onto the center of the table and just score massive warp ritual. So that's an interesting pairing. But again, it all depends on what's in your list and what your opponent brings. The problem with warp ritual is if your opponent has the capacity to deny you, whether that be through having psychers of their own or one of the various stratagems for a 4+ deny, then warp ritual can be actually quite challenging, because if they start denying you, you might score quite low on it. So yeah, that's my general thoughts on secondaries for the Chaos Space Marines. If you'd be interested, let me know in the comments, and I can do a deep dive where I break down every single objective and I talk about how to optimize for that secondary and whether or not that secondary is a good option and what secondary that particular secondary pairs with. If that's something you'd be interested in, I can do that, and I can do it in the same spirit as my masterclass series where I put them all up on the screen and talk about them one by one. If that's something you'd be interested in, let me know in the comments. And as always, if you've enjoyed any of the videos that I've been putting out lately, please consider heading over to my Patreon. You can sign up for $1 a month, which is only 25 cents a week, which is fuck all. You won't even notice it, but I will, and I'll appreciate it greatly, because the more people that do that, the more I'm going to be able to produce this content. Because at the moment, I'm stuck working a 45-hour to 50-hour week at work. I don't have a massive amount of time to produce the content that I would like to. Whereas if I was able to get a little bit more support on the Patreon, I might be able to justify to the missus that I should drop back to, part-time work, and that'd give me a couple of days a week where I could just generate like some really premium content and hit you guys with several videos a week. But that all depends on you guys. So the more support we get on Patreon, the better. And it also means that I can upgrade equipment and things like that as well, instead of, like this video, for example, I'm recording on the drive to work, because I just don't have the time to do the videos that I would like to do the way I would like to do them. So yeah, if you want to show your support and help this channel, then please head over to Patreon. I'll put a link in the description below. And then also, if you want to support the channel in a way where you actually get something tangible in return, there's the neoprene objective markers that I sell, and then basically every time one of those gets sold, I get a couple bucks. So I'll chuck a link in the description down below for that as well. And if you head over there, you can buy some. They've got a billion different designs. Every legion, every faction has a design represented. So yeah, head over there, check those out. And then obviously like and subscribe if you enjoy this content, so that you don't miss any content coming out. And also, if you hit like, that helps the YouTube algorithms, and that helps YouTube suggest this content to other people, which allows the channel to continue to grow further. So if you want to show your support, there's some of the ways that you can do it, and any support that you do show would be greatly appreciated. So yeah, with that said, I'm gonna love you and leave you. I've got to go to work now, and yeah, I'll talk to you guys soon. All right, see ya. Do your objective markers ever get lost behind terrain or other models and become difficult to see? Do they ever get bumped and accidentally moved during a game? And do they ever spark arguments about distances? Well, not anymore. Introducing the blog for the Blood God, not even remotely patented neoprene objective markers.
Made from the same material as astronaut suits, or maybe military equipment, or probably neither of those things, this 2mm thick neoprene synthetic rubber is tear resistant, water resistant, and is designed to last. But that's not all. The blog for the Blood God, not even remotely patented neoprene objective markers come in a variety of different designs and styles to suit any faction represented in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. These objective markers are a perfect gift for yourself or a friend, and are a perfect way to flex and show your opponent that not only are you a smarter, cooler, and better 40k player than them, but you also have more disposable income than they do. For the low price of $25, you'll get not one, not two, but 6 neoprene objective markers, perfectly designed for 9th edition Warhammer 40k. But wait, there's more. For a limited time only, people who sign up on Patreon to support Blog for the Blood God as a Skull Champion tier $5 per month member will gain access to a custom design service where I will design a unique logo to support their gaming club, like the one I did to the left here for the Potato Farmers local gaming club here in Melbourne. Follow the links in the description of this video to pick up your set today.